Welcome to another Foolish Thoughts episode. This is Joseph Barone, aka A Fool for Learning, your training and learning consultant. And our foolish thought for today is, I got an idea for a product and I can make millions from it. But where do I begin? In this episode, I'm once again talking with Derek Ferramosca, and Derek is my special guest. Let me tell you a little bit about him and what he does, and then we'll get right into the topic. And Derek was born right here, born and raised right here in Montgomery County, Maryland, and graduated from the University of Maryland in 2009 with a bachelor's degree in English Lit. He's been a sales professional since 2010 and has worked his way up from starting in business development and now all the way up to a senior account manager. Since 2016, his focus has been in the manufacturing space, helping companies to bring their ideas from prototype stage to full-scale production. His specialty areas, the areas that he loves to work in, is the aerospace, defense, and automotive sectors. And he currently works for GKN Additive Forecast 3D and lives in Northern Virginia with his family. Although I should mention to all of my listeners that I've met Derek when I joined the Lido Civic Club, which is an organization of businessmen and professionals who share not only their business interests, but also their Italian cultural heritage. And we do volunteering in various philanthropic activities. Now, the one really cool thing I didn't know about Derek until we sat down together at dinner one night is that he and my children went to the same elementary school. Although he is older than my kids, it was great that we know a number of the same people. And so we made a great connection that way. So I want to take this opportunity, Derek, to welcome you.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a pleasure being here.
And I'm so glad to have you for this second conversation dealing in something that I normally don't deal with. And so our topic for today is, I've got an idea for a product, whatever that product might be, and I know that I can make millions from this project. It's a great product. But Derek, where do I begin? And so my first question to you, as someone who's been in this manufacturing space for a couple of years now, is, okay, I got this idea for a product. I've been sketching out and thinking about it for a couple of years. I've sketched out a couple of designs, and I think what it looks like, but what's the process? Where do I start now that I got this idea of what I want to make? I got some designs. I got some, just some pencil and paper drawings, or maybe something I tried to draw on my computer. What's the process? Where do I start to get things going?
So there's always the dreams versus reality, right? So
Yes.
we all have dreams about being a singer on a stage and in front of millions of people, but then there's the practice and the actual singing. It's got to worry about that. So I would say start small and really begin with a CAD file. So have your sketches out, all that good stuff.
So before we go any further, what is a CAD file? I mean, not everybody knows what a CAD is.
Sure. Well, a CAD file stands for computer-aided design. And what the professional engineers do or designers do is they have various softwares called SolidWorks, et cetera, where they will use that software to design a CAD file, which is basically the part in cyberspace, so to speak, or in that software. And what you can then use with that CAD file, or do with that CAD file, is send it to a machine, 3D printer, a CNC machine, various other machines that we can discuss, that will then literally be able to make the part and make it real.
So let's take a step back. Let's take it one step back. As we've said, I've got this idea. Whatever the idea is, I want to make a Boy Scout neckerchief slide. I want to make a special cup holder for a car make-believe. Might be a good example to use. And you talked about, the engineer is going to go and you need to get a CAD file. But let's go even more basic than that. Where do I go to get a CAD file made? Who do I speak to? Do I just find someone on the web? What do I do?
Well, one of my favorite tools to use for research these days is YouTube.
Okay.
especially for engineering,
Okay.
because there's mathematical components to engineering, but also visual components, and there are incredible people out there who will literally walk you through the process visually. Also, good old Google searches, books at the library. This is all very basic stuff, but that's where you want to start to understand the methodologies of the people who can help you make your part real.
Okay. Is this something that I can do on my own? In other words, I can buy the software, get the right hardware, make my own CAD file, or is this something that I really should go and find a professional who really knows what they're doing?
I would recommend working with local designers or local professionals. There's also bureaus you can find that can literally help you turn your sketch into a CAD file.
Okay. So the first step is I've got my sketch. And of course, in my sketch, I should have like such things as measurements, maybe the type of material I might like to be, I want to make this out of a particular type of plastic or a particular type of metal. I've got that idea. And then I should go and do some research about CAD. If I know nothing about CAD, what is it? How is it done? What are some of the types of softwares available? Is that correct so far?
Yes.
Okay. And then I should try to look for someone who does this professionally for me. So for example, let's say I wanted to make believe I wanted your company to eventually produce it because I've heard your company is the best company around that can do it. Do you do it or do you farm this sort of work out to others?
We do it all internally.
Okay.
There are some companies out there that I've actually worked for that have more of a service bureau mentality where they farm the work out and whatnot. And there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, so to speak.
Okay.
But we do all of ours domestically in the U.S.
Okay. And so when looking for someone to do a CAD file for me, what are some things that I should be looking for with them? What are some things that I say, oh, this is going to be a company that I can work with, or no, there are some red flags here. This is not a company I should be spending my time and effort with.
I would look for open communication, consistent messaging, and also I would be a little bit less price conscious up front. And definitely get at least 3 quotes from 3 different sources, because that's your best way. This is actually standard buying behavior for lots of defense contractors and other companies, but that gives you a great lay of the land. You can suss out those red flags. Am I hearing one thing, seeing another, so to speak? You can just ask a different competitor, what do you think about this? And a lot of these people are, it's not as duplicitous as people make it out to be. You can be open with your vendors, so to speak, or your sources here, and they'll just tell you this. They might tell you, no, work with the other guy, or I'd like to make this happen for you. And then you're also building the relationship along the way, and that will therefore build trust. In terms of price, there's the old adage, buy once, cry once. So if don't be so worried about the price. Really be worried about the quality in this instance, because this is what's going to carry your product through to the end from quantity 1 to quantity 1 million.
So okay, so I've got my idea for a product. I've done my sketching, and it's taken me a couple of weeks to find the right company that I can work with, that I'm comfortable with. How long does this process take to take it from my pen and pencil sketch on my piece of 8.5 by 11 piece of paper to the actual creation of a CAD file?
I would say a week.
A week?
2 weeks. It can be very fast, depending on how complete your idea is. If you really, let's take the cup holder, for instance, that you want to reinvent the car cup holder.
Right.
Well,
that's
make it
a
a
great
million
one.
times better.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is a great example, because you can go from quantity 1 to 1 million, and you can think about it in terms of, do I want to make this in plastic or metal? Because those are 2 very different processes. But it can be very fast if you really have your idea locked down. That's my one recommendation. When you're ready to cross that Rubicon to making it into this file and working with someone, be sure this is what I want. And then the feedback is going to be from these people, that's not going to build well, that's going to be too thin, that's too thick. Now, sometimes that might occur during the actual manufacturing process
Mm-hmm.
because that's designed for manufacturing feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That's the type of feedback I usually give
Okay.
to a customer. But those are the types of things you want to think about before you cross that Rubicon and make it into that CAD file.
So I should have, before I go to CAD file, if I want to build that cup holder that's going to revolutionize the auto industry, everybody's going to want this particular cup holder. I should have an idea of the type of materials I want, the measurements I want too,
Yes.
what size I want. Do I want this heated? Do I want this the ability to chill my drink, keep my drink chilled? Whatever the case might be, the more that I have, the better it is when I go to see this particular company that creates this CAD file for me.
Yeah, company or individuals.
Or
You'd be
individuals.
surprised. Like, for instance, I spoke to someone who was in New York recently, and they needed some help with this stage. And I told them, buddy, you can't throw a rock outside in New York City without finding a designer or someone who works in that industry. You know,
Right.
you'd be.
This is not in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
You know.
But even if you are in the middle of nowhere with technology, if you have a computer, there's also free softwares you can use to make your own CAD file if you want. Like I said, if you educate yourself, you know, you don't expect to be the expert or tell the experts what to do, but you can find out a lot of basics very fast.
And if you were to talk about costs, because I know people always ask, how much is this going to cost me? And I know every product is different. I understand that every person has their ideas more solidified than others. But if you were to say, you know, Joe, it might cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. What are some general thoughts? I have no idea. I've never done one before, so I have no idea.
I'm recoiling.
How much it costs. But what are some costs, or what are some numbers that you've heard?
I would say, you know, from 250 to a couple $1,000.
Oh,
depending on complexity, depending on the part, depending on who you're working with.
okay.
If you're going to work with, for instance, you know, the people who design the Xbox, right? Because that's who Microsoft works with. Yeah, you can expect to be billed $50,000 just to talk to them, probably. But if you're working with some of these other services or local people, you know, you can expect some very reasonable costs out of this.
Okay. So I have my idea. I've taken my idea to someone who's created a CAD file. We've worked together over the period of 1, 2, 3 weeks, whatever the amount of time is. I've created my CAD file. Where do I go now? I've got this idea. I've got my file. Where do I go?
Well, you could go to GKN Additive Forecast 3D.
That's fine.
but there's lots of companies out there. A lot of them keep me up at night, I'm not going to lie. But there's so many options for the prototype stage right now. It's really wonderful. I mean, if you're really adventurous, there's literally machines you could put on your desk you can buy for $350. Like I said, the free software is out there. You can make your own, and you can practice with downloadable files people give you for free.
Right.
That's like the easiest way to just make one. I usually deal with more professional companies, more serious, you know, companies that are always prototyping, and it's going to cost a little bit more to work with me than the average someone who's printing something on their desk, so to speak.
Right.
Like as little as $50 for quantity one, even if it's a smaller part.
Is that? But that's not the price for you. That's if I work with someone who's kind of an individual with their own little printer, that sort of thing.
They could do less,
right?
Maybe more. You know, at that stage, it's a little wonky.
Right.
But as long as you have the CAD file, here's the most important bit. You can shop around to different companies. You've got lots of options. And multi-jet fusion, which is one of my specialties now, very fast, very inexpensive.
And what is, for my listeners, what is multi-jet fusion?
Sure. Well, the multi-jet fusion is a powder bed process, meaning there's a bed of powder. The machine lays down a layer of powder, shoots it with a laser, lays down another layer of powder, shoots it with a laser. And I like to tell people, just to visualize it, it's like you're building a part out of pancakes.
Okay.
And the classic 3D printing process, fused deposition modeling, those machines sit on your desk and you'll see a spindle drawing the part in 3D. That's literally what it's doing with a thin layer of plastic. It's like you're building the part out of spaghetti.
Right.
I tell people. And they're all amazing processes. There's also selective laser sintering, which is very similar to multi-jet fusion. It's just slightly different. it doesn't have binder jet agents. I'm getting into the woods here.
Yeah.
This is my job. But there's also
Mhm.
DMLS. I'll leave you with this one. This is my favorite one. Direct metal laser sintering. You're building the parts out of metal with that layering process I told you
Okay.
about. And that's one of my favorites because you can look in the machine and see the sparks going off and everything.
Cool.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Okay. So I go to a company and they make a prototype. I get that first prototype done. I've got it. It looks good. Maybe I need some more tweaking of it. Go back, get a new CAD file made, update the CAD file, get a new prototype made. So now I have my prototype done. It's all done. And now the question is, I want to take this. I want to make like 50,000 of them or 10,000 or whatever the number might be that I need to sell, that I want to sell. Where do I go? What do I do?
You go to your big box store.
Okay.
You walk in and you ask them, "Do you need 50,000 cup holders?"
Okay.
But that is where it gets tricky, and that's where there's ways to sell it yourself,
Okay.
Etsy and social media.
Mhm.
There's very avenues to do it, to bootstrap it. You do need to do some research to talk to. And I've worked with people who literally had contacts at Walmart and other, so real examples where you are able to go in front of them and talk to them and say, hey, do you want to put this on your shelf? And you do need to, that's where the homework comes in for presenting yourself and naming the venture, naming the part that you want to sell or the project you want to sell. So it is tricky, but that's where the creativity comes in. And then once you know there's a need, then you say, what's your budget? So going from what I commonly see is you go from 1 to 100, and then 100 to 1,000, and then 1,000 to your dream of 50,000. And you want to look at different processes, like it could be 3D printing. Usually at those numbers, you get out of 3D printing, you need to go to injection molding or CNC manufacturing. So that's usually where it goes from there.
So, now, are there companies? I'm assuming there are companies that can help you in this process. I've got my idea. I've got a widget, but I really have no clue. How do I get into the stores? Are there companies that can help you with this?
That part I'm not super familiar with. I really focus on making the parts, but there are consultants out there for sure. There's people you can talk to, but that's the black magic. That's where uncle works at Walmart or some company, or someone gives you an in, or somebody. You really want to make sure you have the need first before you spend too much money. But I mean, there's always the dream. If it's out there, they will come, so to speak. If you have a really good idea, like for instance, fidget spinners. I'm not sure if you remember fidget spinners.
I still got some floating around here somewhere.
I remember I was working at a company and I was talking to a guy and he said, Derek, you don't understand these things. They're going to take over. Kids can't keep their hands off of them. And I said, same thing I always say, sure, buddy. Whatever you say, okay. Hung up the phone. He ended up not buying with me. He had another source or something, which is common. There's lots of different options out there. But I'll be danged if that summer my daughter had one, the Ocean City, boxes of them all over the place. So you never know. There's always potential for the explosion.
Right. Okay. So any other thoughts on this process? So any other piece of advice that you can give some would-be inventor, somebody who has that great idea that they can make the $1 million, $10 million, be set for life with that fidget spinner, that cup holder? Any other advice?
If you build it, they will come.
Okay.
Right? Like the movie said, I would say do it. We're in a time with technology that is completely unique, where you really can just build one of something. And you can put it online and 1 million people can see it, and then you can get it going. And we're in a time where educating yourself is easier than ever with whether it's the CAD file. You can literally have a machine on your desk make your dream come true. It's a really wonderful time. I would just encourage people to learn, encourage your children to learn. I try and teach my daughter about these things. Of course, she thinks dad's not cool. So
hey, been there, done that.
but she's much better with math than I am. She's got some artistic temperaments that escape me, and I really encourage her. Think about 3D printing.
Mhm.
Think about making a CAD file, and you can do whatever you want with it now. So that's my bit of advice.
Okay.
Dream big and make it happen.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, Derek. And Derek, if someone out there wants to get a hold of you, maybe it's because they have a CAD file and they want something produced. Maybe they want to come to you in your company because they've heard you here. Maybe they have a question about, hey, I've got this idea. I just want to just chat with someone. Do you think this thing can be manufactured or not? How do they get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. That's a big one. I'm available on LinkedIn professionally. Feel free to reach out. You can ask me questions. Also, you can reach out to GKN Additive Forecast 3D or Forecast 3D online. Just type that into the Google search. I'm the East Coast rep, so if you're on the East Coast, you'll definitely talk to me. But we have lots of resources on the website, publicly available. No secrets there. Great opportunity to learn and talk to us about helping your dreams come true.
Well, great. Derek, thank you so much for being part of my Foolish Thoughts podcast. This is a whole new area for me, just as with the sales. It's not something that I deal with normally. And so I really greatly appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you for having me, Joe. It's been wonderful, always.
And this is Joseph Barone, a.k.a. A Fool for Learning, signing out. Remember, learn, perform, succeed.